I congratulate Lindsey Buckingham on this. A doff to the gentleman's cap to you, that you realize that you basically have enough money that you can make art for yourself. You can experiment. You can try things that are not this well-worn path that you've already established that made you a lot of money because you got the money. You can try to do something different and not really care if people are going to like it or not. I don't like it, but I liked that he did it.
Welcome, friends and well-wishers, to another episode of 1001 Album Complaints, the podcast where friends, musicians, sit down and debate whether or not the record of the week is worthy of Robert Dimery's 1001 albums you must listen to before you die. This week yes. we have a couple of St. Matthews All-Stars. We've got myself, Phil,
going deep.
as well as you guys just want to introduce yourselves.
Fellow Wildcat.
Yeah. You got Tom over here ready to talk about this very long album.
Yeah, this week we're going to be covering Tusk by Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, yes.
Which is very, very exciting stuff.
This is Adam, also very excited to get into it. But first,
this is all we were listening to in grade school, right? Just jamming on
Stop
Tusk.
listening to Tusk, dude.
Nothing like a double album to really set the mood for a bunch of 11-year-olds.
So speaking of setting the mood, let's just kick it off quickly with the title track, and then we'll come back and we'll dive in with some tweet length reviews and other.
Was that written on your other?
That was not on Tusk by Fleetwood Mac. And as we just learned, we have Tom and Adam as well as myself, Phil, with us this week. So we just listened to the title track, Tusk there. I mean, really can't wait to sort of dive in and unpack that. But Adam, I mean, let's start with you. What were your opinions of the record this week? And, what's your tweet length review? What's your sort of encapsulated feeling on this week's?
Sure.
Listen.
So I had I had two tweet length reviews. One was very long, and I was trying to get clever, but I'm going to abandon that one, and I'm going to go with my shorter one, which is Welcome to the new Fleetwood Mac album. You don't get to hear Stevie Nicks until track 5.
Tom, what about you? Where did you land?
Here's my tweet length review. I wrote it up all nice and professionally, so give me a second. I'll pull my note card up here. Okay. Following up on their smash hit Rumours, the main songwriters of Fleetwood Mac proceed to make 3 solo albums and then for some reason smash them together into one bloated double album. Yes.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's actually pretty good.
That is solid.
It is 100% 3 solo albums. Or it's like 2 solo albums and a Stevie Nicks EP. And they just sort of smashed them all together. And it suffered for that. Totally inconsistent.
It's interesting you put it that way, because my tweet length review was, if Buckingham had left Fleetwood Mac in December of 77, not December of 87, maybe Tusk could have been salvaged. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't even know if these guys were... It seems like they weren't even in the same state when they were recording these songs. Like, this is just an entirely, disparate endeavor.
The only thing that seems to hold the record together is that everybody agrees it should be more mellow than previous Fleetwood Mac records, right? Yeah. Which, it's already, super smooth, pop rock with just a tinge of jazz harmony, right?
Yeah.
Well, you think about what was going on in the timeline of Fleetwood Mac. You had Rumours that had just come out. Massive hit. They could not possibly follow up Rumours with anything that was going to be even close to that successful. They're not the Beatles.
Right. It's the Sixth Sense of albums.
Yeah.
There's no way your follow-up to the Sixth Sense is just going to be anything even close. So why bother trying?
Yeah, just make signs,
Just make
So why not take 2 years? Yeah, so why not take 2 years to not even try?
Yeah.
Right? All right, so before we dive into the history, because there's a lot of history here to dive into that's fun.
Sure. One of the points that I wanted to make about this particular album and why I think it fits in the timeline well is that, as we'll discuss, Rumours was like the heady days of affairs and marriages breaking up, and this is the post-divorce depression settling in,
Yeah,
and
that's a
everybody's
good way
dealing
to
with
put
it in
it.
a different way.
Although I think when we dig into the timeline, we'll find that infidelity is just like part of Fleetwood Mac. Like it predates Nicks Buckingham, which is interesting. Cool. So something I missed at the top was, if you like us, if you like what you're hearing, if you like the podcast, send us an email. Just drop us a note at 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com. Tell us, about the time you spent 2 years releasing a not follow-up to your epic smash hit. Who knows?
That was a solid PSA, by the way. Very seamless. I liked it. Right?
Well, it's important that we make sure that our listeners know that they can always reach out to slander us at 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com or agree with us. Really.
Or they can write a review. They could subscribe, they could like this, and they can also tell a friend, which we think word of mouth is probably the strongest thing. Like the old infomercials from the 90s. If you tell a friend, we'll give you something else.
I've already told all 7 of my friends, so I'm tapped out.
4 of which are routinely on this call. So,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, that's where
I've exhausted my friends list as well.
But I guess I could subscribe.
You
haven't subscribed to our own
yet?
podcast? Come on.
I don't subscribe to anything on...
Fucking nihilists.
I'm a bit of a nihilist. But anyway, let's get back on topic here, guys.
Sure.
So, do we want to break cadence and just like rip Tusk before we jump into the song Tusk, before we get into the history of Fleetwood Mac, or do you want to save it?
Let's save it a little bit.
It's your show, man.
Save it. I want to save it. Let's talk about the history of Fleetwood Mac, then we'll touch on Tusk, and then we'll get back into the music.
All right, we played it at the top, and I'm eager to dive in.
Okay.
So there's a lot of really fun stuff about early Fleetwood Mac. I mean, these guys were super on the scene, specifically Mick Fleetwood. I think something that is sort of lost on really everybody, including myself, until I stumbled across an old school Fleetwood Mac record years ago, is that Fleetwood Mac is both named after the drummer, Mick Fleetwood, and Fleetwood Mac released something like 7 or 8 records before Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks entered the band, creating creating Fleetwood Mac as you know it. So the first Fleetwood Mac record came out in 1968.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I deliberately didn't look at the history because I wanted you to get some real reactions here because I had no idea about the history.
Early, you really understand, these guys were on the scene. In
68.
London, late 60s, post-Beatles, Eric Clapton, Cream, Led Zeppelin, they are scene guys. So Mick Fleetwood gets hooked up with Peter Green. Peter Green is the guy that had been tapped to replace Eric Clapton in John Mayall and the Blues Breakers when Clapton went on to do whatever, Cream probably, right? So this guy Peter Green and Mick Fleetwood hook up to create what later became the Fleetwood Mac as we know it. They had been all over the place with, again, they're close with Clapton. They also are in touch with this guy, Jeremy Spencer, who's just a big guy on the sort of British club scene. And in 1968, they released their first record, their first self-titled record called Fleetwood Mac. There were multiples. Their second self-titled record would be the Stevie Nicks Buckingham initial release. And on their self-titled record is Carlos Santana's hit, Black Magic Woman, which is written by Mick Fleetwood, the drummer of Fleetwood Mac.
Really?
Yes, and Peter Green.
Dude, they are old.
Yeah, they're old.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Right? Yep. So that is pre-Fleetwood Mac, leading up to the first Fleetwood Mac record that comes out in 1968. It's only released in
just think about
the UK.
that. They're pre-Woodstock. Mm-hmm. And when was not Abbey Road. Abbey Road. Abbey Road was recorded in 68, 69?
Yeah.
God, that's crazy.
So
All right.
they would have been
I'm floored.
Peter Green and Mick Fleetwood. Those two members specifically would have been sort of at the forefront of, this like post-Beatles underground British scene. Right there with Cream and, sort of other post-Beatle Led Zeppelin. All right.
Speaking of that, by the way, did you see in your research that Mick Fleetwood's brother-in-law was George Harrison?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
No, that actually did not come up.
No, you're joking.
I'm not joking. Mick Fleetwood's
How
brother-in-law
did
was
that
George
connection
Harrison.
happen?
Oh my God.
I don't know.
Did he marry Harrison's sister, or did Harrison marry his sister?
I don't know. Give me just a second. Give me a second
sure.
to try to figure this out here, because good old Mickey Fleets. Let's see what his marriage history is here.
I feel like we're on Finding Your Roots.
Yeah, right.
On PBS.
On a personal life.
Professor What's-His-Face.
Oh, you know what? He married Jenny Boyd, Patty Boyd's sister. Patty Boyd of Wonderful Tonight and Harrison and Bangin' Clapton.
Man,
fan.
I wish that hadn't been the reason, man. That's
That was a little bit of a bummer.
Clapton.
yeah, right. So on this excursion, right, like through this 60s period in London, that's where they meet this guy John McVie. John McVie is the bass player, and is him and Mick Fleetwood go on to be long-standing members of the band. They're both been in the band since its inception, bass and drums, holding it down. Right, so that comes out in 68. In 69, they follow up with another record called Mr. Wonderful. It has a very, very creepy picture of a young shirtless Mick Fleetwood wearing a hat on the cover. He looks like he's like a pallbearer or something. It's very odd. But what's important about this record is a studio musician. Well, they hire somebody to do some studio stuff. Keyboard player by the name of Christine Perfect, who would resurface in other studio sessions, but would later resurface in the version of Fleetwood Mac we know as Christine McVie, because she marries the bass player. They go along to, So it keeps rolling like this. I'm actually trying to get to this record. But so after Mr. Wonderful comes Then Play On. And I bring that up specifically because that's where I actually became aware of pre-Fleetwood Mac. I found Then Play On at like a bargain bin sale, like a record street sale when I was about 25. Record came out in 1969. It's cool. It's not amazing. It's cool. It's very cool. It's very hip. And it sounds absolutely nothing like the Fleetwood Mac that we've all come to sort of know and love. Sounds nothing like the Rumours Fleetwood Mac.
Right.
And what it sounds like is Peter Green Fleetwood Mac. So this is sort of what I think of as like first era. First era Fleetwood Mac is this guy, Peter Green. He's leading the band. He's primary songwriter along with Mick Fleetwood, but he's really a guitar guy in the school of like Clapton, Jimmy Page, has a little more of a slow jam style. And one thing I'll say about Peter Green, I actually stumbled across this years ago. This has been in my guitar player bag of tricks. Is Peter Green has one super duper specific thing he does in his style, right? Which is he takes a minor pentatonic scale. He sort of takes the minor blues, the B.B. King thing, right? And he takes literally every seventh, every dominant seventh, right? So if you're in A minor, a G note, and he plays the sixth, always. He always plays I guess it's a F, right? Yeah.
That's his go-to.
So it's interesting, right? Because it creates this weird ambiguity, right? Because like when you're playing music, right, you sort of have those two money notes. You got your minor third, major third. That's like your real super expressive, nobody can miss it note. And then you got your dominant seven and your major seven. That's the one that I feel like people can miss it a little more easily. Even though if you get it wrong, right, like it'll still sound funky.
You're still okay.
Yeah, exactly. But you're still okay. But he just steers clear of it wholesale. He stays so far away from that secondary expressive note that the whole thing is very fluid. And it's just and that's his style. And that is the sound of Fleetwood Mac from 1968 until, I don't know. I don't know what they sound like from this mid-period, from Future Games and Bare Trees and Penguin, before they run into Stevie Nicks' Fleetwood Mac in 1955.
Well, the thing that I find interesting about Fleetwood Mac is they're like the anti-Dave Matthews Band, right? Because Dave Matthews is like, I'm the singer, I'm the songwriter, I write everything, it's my band.
Yes.
And they're like, we're named after the drummer and the bass player, we don't write shit. And so, like, a bunch of people keep coming in, and the sound totally changes based upon the songwriters that are coming in. And it's interesting. It's like an interesting approach.
No, it's super interesting, because you think about, like, the sort of, like, you think about, like, the sort of, like, Swedish, like, sort of, like, disco pop factory that would have been happening around the same time. You even think of, like, it even makes me think of, like, Daft Punk and how they wear those helmets, because, like, if you saw what they really looked like, you wouldn't think they were that hip, you know?
And Mick Fleetwood is definitely not hip looking. There's nothing hip about him.
I would say he gets hipper as he gets older.
Sure.
But
I
mean,
see that.
you know, right, you know, I guess.
It's all relative.
So Fleetwood Mac also has this fun thing, right, that I'll call lawsuit era Fleetwood Mac. I knew nothing of this, but I found this in my research, very similar to the ZZ Top era, right, like lawsuit era, where I feel like we did a ZZ Top podcast where members of the ZZ Top met playing some kind of...
Now, it was the Zombies.
Yeah,
because
they
ZZ
were,
Top met impersonating the zombies just to get a crowd.
Because nobody knew what the Zombies looked like.
Right.
So something similar happened with Fleetwood Mac. It wasn't quite the same, but Fleetwood Mac had largely been a UK band. They didn't release any records in the US. That Then Play On in 1969 was their first US release. So in 1963, the band had essentially collapsed. It had broken up for the second time, right? And a whole bunch of US gigs booked. And the booking agents just got a whole bunch of musicians to go out and do the tunes.
We are Macwood Fleet. Thank you.
Exactly. And this kicked off like a lawsuit era where the owners of the trademark name were suing the concert promoters, essentially saying, like, that's not Fleetwood Mac, right? Like, I can't...
That's probably in the same general time frame as the Zombies thing,
Very
too,
much.
right? Because the Zombies, Odyssey and Oracle was 68, 69, and you had ZZ Top forming in the same era.
This would have been
impersonating
70...
the Texas Zombies.
This would have been 74, late 73 into 75. This would have been happening right up until they got serious about recording with Buckingham and Nicks.
Got it.
Man, what a time to be alive, you know?
what a weird time. Yeah, totally, right?
You just go ahead and scam your way into playing in the stadium, being like, oh no, yeah, I'm Radiohead. It's me, yeah, I'm Radiohead. I don't know if I told you guys, I'm Radiohead. So anyway, how about is the Spectrum still a thing? The Spectrum's not a thing anymore. Okay, Veterans Stadium, that's not a thing anymore. What do you got? Core State Center or something like that?
Yeah,
I'll play that one. That's fine.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I don't have any equipment. You're gonna need to supply all that for me.
Can I get some backline?
Yeah, and the backline was robust. 'Cause this would Anyway, let's not get into the technology of the time. I mean, honestly, this is something that we maybe could talk about later. Is that a huge part of not just Fleetwood Mac but also the Grateful Dead and a lot of the bands of the late '70s is they were hitting at a time when the technology allowed for people to be able to play indoor venues like hockey arenas, basketball arenas, as well as go outdoor to baseball stadiums and football stadiums. Prior to that, there was just no real way to do it.
To get loud enough.
Yeah, to get loud enough, right? I mean, this is part of why the Beatles stopped touring, right? Because they literally could not hear themselves over the din of screaming teenage girls. Right? So by the late 70s, those technical problems have been solved, and I think bands like Fleetwood Mac were beneficiaries of that technology. I mean, I just want to rip into Tusk, right? We could talk 1975, we could talk about Rumours and Fleetwood Mac too, but let's backtrack on that when we talk about how good they are in reference to this piece of shit.
Dude, I gotta tell you, I did a mental exercise, and I listened to the Lindsey Buckingham solo album, and it's not bad. It hangs together way better, and it's experimental, and it's kind of cool. So that's basically, it would be The Ledge, Save Me a Place, What Makes You Think You're the One, That's All for Everyone, Not That Funny, That's Enough for Me, I Know I'm Not Wrong, Walk a Thin Line, and close it with Tusk. That's not a bad album.
You know, I didn't look at it this way at all. This is this is an interesting hypothesis. I'd like to hear these three mixes, these three standalone mixes.
Yeah.
Maybe we provide them.
Yeah, you know, they'll be in the notes. Did anybody else notice at the very beginning of this song, it sounds like the way that they had set up the drum mic, that when he was moving his body to do that sort of fill down the toms, that he's like moving in front of the microphone, and it's kind of like the volume starts to dip as he like sort of goes through that. It's inconsistent, doesn't happen every time, but yeah.
I had not noticed that specifically, but no doubt listening to this record, I get a strong sense that like this has always been Mick Fleetwood's band. It's the drummer's band, right? I also like the place that they recorded this, Sound City Studios, would have been equipped with this API console, which, without going down a whole rabbit hole about like gear, what API consoles basically represented was the American response to Abbey Road. So there isn't an Abbey Road, right, studio, but what there is this American company called API, and they have their own solid state response to what is happening in the Abbey Road studios. They're out of Chicago, and I feel like Fleetwood Mac, not just on this record, but on the two previous as well, both Rumours and Fleetwood Mac 2, I'll call it for these purposes. They, like, I feel like that is the API sound. In that way, in the same way that, like, Abbey Road is the Abbey Road sound, right?
Right.
When I read about how this album cost something of like the equivalent of $3 million of today's money to make, I was flabbergasted because a lot of it kind of sounds like shit. Recording fidelity wise, a lot of it kind of sounds like shit.
Dude, I think the drums sound great, but like Tusk specifically has like the USC marching band or something.
Yeah.
I remember the behind the mirror, the pop-up video on this.
Yep.
Where's the fucking horn section? Right? Like they don't come in until like 2 minutes and they're all buried, and it's like, what did you?
It's not that difficult to record a marching band.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of just stick a mic near them and you're going to get everything.
Yeah,
you're in
it
the
seems to
same
like suck all
neighborhood.
the energy out of it, right? I don't know.
The great bass tone, though. The bass tone is fantastic on this song. I like it a lot. Fat and thick and just really lays into it.
Well, that's an interesting thing about Fleetwood Mac in general, right? Is that it is a band that is sort of for and by the drummer and bass player. So you get tone. You get a lot of tone. You get a lot of rhythm. You get a lot of depth in those areas.
Well, that's their only contributions, though, because they're like, we own the band. I mean, you write the songs, but it's still our band. And so I get to worry about how fat my bass sounds for an hour and a half on the board, I'm sure. What was the one quote that I saw? I think it might have been John McVie, who said, you know, people talk about how this album was really expensive and it was really kind of bloated and took a long time. He's like, for Rumours, we spent 10 months in the studio and we got 10 songs. We spent 10 months in the studio and we got 20 songs for this album, so I think it's a little overblown. I was like, you spent 10 months in the studio making these albums? That's insanity.
I think it might have been longer because I was watching an interview with Ken Calais, who was the producer, and he specifically said 366 days. So I think they started recording and like maybe not actually recording, but actually like getting mics set up and getting the studio ready. But he specifically called out 366 days. So I wonder if they went in and then they were like, we're done, and it was a year and a day after when they had started.
It's very possible, and I gotta tell you, it made me like Rumours less, where I was like, you got to spend a month per song. Granted, they came out really great, but that's a lot of time to spend per song to just really get it wired and sounding great.
I don't need to like go off on Rumours here, but Rumours sounds really great.
Rumours is dope. I love Rumours.
yeah,
Rumours is
yeah,
amazing. But I like. For example, last week we talked about the Bell and Sebastian albums, one of which was recorded in 3 days.
5 days.
One was recorded in 5 days, and they both made the list as, must hear. And this, it seems like, good Lord, I guess you get that Rumours money. And I saw something that basically, by the time they were recording this album in 1978, Rumours had already sold 10 million copies.
Yep. In 1 year, it sold 10 million.
Here's an interesting question. Was it all funded by Black Magic Woman money?
Santana's
You know what I mean? Like, did they take Black Magic Woman money, double down into Fleetwood Mac 2, right? Turn that into, take that, double down into Rumours. Now you're rolling, right? Like,
hell yeah.
Or maybe all those studio execs were like, listen, give him whatever they want. He's still friends with George Harrison. Maybe we can get some of that sweet Harrison material going on here. Could get another Harrison solo album out of him. But listen, I don't hate the version of the album Tusk that sounds like this. So one of the things that I read that made me come to a different perspective on.
So you don't hate the Buckingham album?
I don't hate the Buckingham album.
Threaded through here, okay.
I read that.
I kind of like the Christine McVie record that's threaded through here. One of my notes is like, is this the Christine McVie like breakout record that didn't happen? Right? Like,
maybe they're probably like contractually obligated to put an album out as Fleetwood Mac, but
I have no idea.
So apparently, Lindsey Buckingham was obsessed with Talking Heads while he was making this album. And that really shone through to me when it made a lot more sense when I read this. Like, oh, you were like super into Talking Heads with this polyrhythm, weird herky jerky stuff going on, and you dabbled in those waters, but they lived in those waters. They were born in those waters. You can't just be a you can't. Casual.
And I think that makes sense for the song Tusk. Right? Which for me, the song Tusk is an odd synopsis for the record. I think the song is actually kind of all right, but really not that good. You keep waiting for it to happen, and then it never does. And then the song just fades out.
I couldn't get out of my head the little scene at the end of Return of the Jedi, where all the Ewoks are dancing around. You could put this song over top of everybody dancing and everything. It felt like an Ewok song. It just was so odd, and they're saying "hooga chaka wook," it was so interesting, I'll say. And second to last on the entire double album as well.
I picked up because I just had to go to see that new Minions Rise of Gru movie with my kids. The backup sounded like Minions and like ooba-da-ba-dee-da, ooba-ba-dee-ba, I was like, dude, and I hate the way that the Minions sound. I cannot stand it at all. I was specifically calling that out to my wife. I was like, they sing a version of "You Can't Always Get What You Want" in their like Minions nonsense language. And I was like, that's like nails on a chalkboard for me. I cannot stand
it's rough.
This. Yeah,
it's rough.
And then I went to go, and I was like, oh wait, great, I got a whole album worth of this. Fantastic.
No.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Christine McVie album that we're covering this week.
Yeah. Okay, so the record kicks off with the song we'll listen to now called "Over and Over," a Christine McVie tune.
And would you know how
I thought this was hilarious because knowing what happens on track 2, if you're coming in fresh and you're like, oh, all right, Rumours Volume 2, I can get down with this. Hey, Christine, track 1, we're going a little soft rock, smooth thing, a continuation. People don't know what's coming up on track 2, but let's focus. All right, we'll focus on Over and Over. I thought it sounded lovely. I mean, it was laid back. It's an odd way to start.
Yeah, an odd way to start. Yeah, great
an
way to
album.
put it.
Like, man, this
start.
is down. Now, I wonder if they were doing it for the sheer shock value of what's to come. But yeah, I thought it sounded nice.
They're trying to establish that this is going to be a more acoustic album, potentially.
Right. Rumours Side 3 is what this is the start of.
Yeah. It's funny you say Rumours Side 3 because I thought that the melody over the chorus was really reminiscent of the chorus of that song You Make Lovin' Fun. You believe in the ways of love. And the melody over the chorus there's a couple of lines that like it's very evocative of that and very similar to it, but just like a way more down version of it. And I agree that I wouldn't have picked this as an opener. It's a weird choice, but man, I bitch and complain about shitty long outros all the time. This is how you do an outro. This is a great outro. It's about a minute.
Yes.
It's like a minute of a 4.5 minute song.
Yep. But they do a great job because while working through the chord pattern, when they get to the outro, the bass holds the root.
Yes.
And you say something's different, something's happening. And you can tell like, oh, this is the end, right? Like this is where we're now transitioning out of the song. It's a really powerful way to indicate a change.
That's definitely one of, I think, McVie's big tricks on bass. And you'll notice it more on Rumours, too. He definitely does the straight, like, pedal tone here, right? But, like, he'll find these little pockets where he's like, oh, I'm just going to play 2 notes for fucking ever. You know, bing, bong, bing, bong. You know, and there'll be other changes, and maybe sometimes the bing is actually kind of a weird note. But he just won't stop. And it's like there's a hypnotism created by it, right?
We were talking about this the other day. That's the bass player's superpower. That's why guitar players generally don't make good bass players, because they don't understand. You pick 3 notes and play them forever, and it all of a sudden comes back around to great.
And it works.
And it just doesn't work on the guitar to do that. It's just not the same.
I did have a complaint on this song. So the sound of the electric piano that comes in at around minute 32, it sounds like a 1980s sitcom or like a 1980s like Dallas or like, like one of those dramas from the 80s. It's just
totally
super jangly, and I would have just appreciated a Wurlitzer or a Rhodes or a grand piano for that matter. I don't know if it's some synth.
I know the exact sound you're talking about. It's like, yeah.
I don't know what that is, but yeah.
Welcome to this week's installment of Adam Bitches About Synth Tones. Shortly to be followed up by Adam Complains About Pitchiness at some point.
Well, guys,
guaranteed.
I have some really exciting news. The next song we're going to listen to is called "The Ledge" by Fleetwood Mac. It's on their 1979 release, Rumours. Excuse me, Tusk. And I think Adam's going to have some complaints here too. So let's get
Coke, just Coke all over it. So I was reading that the making of this album was just rock and roll excess. There was cocaine everywhere. There's a joke that not a joke, but a story that on the first night of recording, they all went out and either Mick bought himself a brand new Porsche. It somehow got crashed, or he somehow crashed it. It was totaled. He didn't have insurance on it.
They all woke up.
They're all coked out. They woke up at 6 a.m. like 10 hours later, and not a note had been put to tape on their first day of recording. All they did was just went out and crashed a car and got high.
We mentioned earlier the massive success of Rumours. Just the money must have been pouring in. And I congratulate Lindsey Buckingham on this. A doff to the gentleman's cap to you, that you realize that you basically have enough money that you can make art for yourself. You can experiment. You can try things that are not this well-worn path that you've already established that made you a lot of money because you got the money. You can try to do something different and not really care if people are going to like it or not. I don't like it, but I liked that he did it. I like that he tried to do it and was like, you know what? Like, I could write The Chain Part 2 and we'll call it like, The Rope or something like that, but no, I'm going to write The Ledge, and it's going to be like, I'm about to jump off of a ledge. I'm out of my mind on cocaine. But also it's not, as Rob would say, mellifluous. It doesn't sound pleasant. It's like
and I mean, again, on the front of like, while we're on the topic of Buckingham taking chances, I mean, it has really great chances taken in the mix. You got the bass to one side, the drums to the other side, him sort of down the middle. The background vocals are sort of banging all around.
It sounded like when he, being aware that he didn't want to make Rumours Part 2 or Rumours Side 3, that he was trying to force himself into this creative space by just super switching it up. So the producer said that when they went in and they were just trying to get levels and everything in the studio, that they got a really nice sounding tone, and Lindsey Buckingham told him to just take every knob and literally just turn it 180 degrees where it is, because he just wanted something different. He wanted to break something out of the mold that he was in. And I don't know if this is the tune, but he said that they taped a mic to the floor so that he could do the vocals while doing a push-up. So it sounded strained when he was like doing the lines or something. So I'm not sure. It was one of the It was one of the Buckingham songs. This may be it. But yeah, this is such a jump out as the one guy who's really not trying to be the same. Yeah. So Tom, I do appreciate that.
How is this the opening track on your Buckingham mix?
This is the opening track on the Buckingham mix. Yes.
On the Redux, is that what it's called?
And listen, I think this song sounds kind of modern. And specifically when they do that kind of cut out to like the "Make It Baby" lines.
Yes, I totally had that.
It sounds really modern. Like, I actually think it sounds pretty hip. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't really like the song, but the fact that they made that in 78, and it's like, that holds up. That could be something that's like an indie band would be doing today, and it would be like, it wouldn't be out of place.
Phil, did you read anything about how he got those guitar sounds? Because I mean, I know it's like, it almost sounds like he took his home stereo and like put it in and distorted it, but it also sounds like the strings are super loose. Like, I don't know if maybe he used a fat gauge.
I didn't find anything. Yeah, I didn't find anything specific on the guitar tone for the Ledge, but yes, I definitely noted that it doesn't sound like a fuzz pedal or anything like that. It sounds like he's done something possibly physical, right? Like not electromechanical, right?
Right.
To like make it sound like shit, yet still be in tune, and
like he fed a piece of loose leaf through the strings, so they get like that vibrating blah, blah, blah sound or something. It was it was a wild tune. And again, this is track 2. Yeah. Right? So you start in all light and jazzy from Over and Over, and then this hits, and you're like, what's wrong? Something happened. I don't know what's going on.
This is one of the songs that is all Lindsey Buckingham, right?
Right.
It's just him.
Right.
Doing everything.
Oh, that's right. Even the high-pitched backups was him playing with the tape machines to sound like a woman. Yeah.
And again, like, cool, it's also the work of a crazy person. So, take that for what it is.
Well, like, there are McCartney songs like this, right? Like, is it like, Why Don't We Do It in the Road, or Everybody's Got Something to Hide But Me and My Monkey? Like, one of those tunes is like an all McCartney, like, late night studio experiment, right?
Okay.
Point is, this feels like a late night studio experiment, not like track 2 on like the follow-up to the biggest record of a decade.
Right.
All right, so we ready to move on to Think About Me? Any other notes?
Jump to the other album, album.
Yeah, let's jump to the third album. All right, let's kick it off. Here we go.
No, we're still in the McVie album. We're still in the McVie album.
Yeah, good call. It's a Fleetwood Mac song. Sounds pretty good, right?
I love it. Yeah, this is great.
So this is track 3, right? Like, so we got Over and Over, super mellow, The Ledge, very out of left field Lindsey Buckingham. Now we get a track 3, basically just like a song off Rumours, a song off Fleetwood Mac 2.
Yeah. I would have been
Phil's kind of focus list, which in my mind is a good is a better album than potentially the double album, right? The Phil Redux, I think you should listen to. That should have, taken off.
That's something that's funny, because I was just looking at the songs we yet to discuss and sort of what's on the album, and what we're not going to speak to today is that there are 20 songs on this record.
Whew.
20 songs. It runs, I think, about 80.
74 minutes and 25
I was going to say about 80
seconds.
minutes, so it was a little shorter than I expected. But, I mean, it is long. And maybe back to McVie's point, like, maybe they only should put out 10 songs. Right? Like, if they put out 10 of these songs, maybe a couple of them are B-sides on singles. Mm-hmm. Right? It's just a lot of material.
Well, they released 6 singles.
They should have kept their powder dry for their solo albums. I mean, it really would have been like I know I keep harping on this, but like
it worked for the Beatles.
But legitimately, yeah.
I heard All Things Must Pass the other day, like on a drive. Those are just all the songs that like didn't get put out in the Beatles, and it's great, like.
Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that approach. Especially when you're just riding it's not like you're like, I need a hit. I got to put everything on this one because if we don't have a hit, what are we going to do? No, you don't need a hit anymore. You're
crashing Porsches, dude.
Dude, you know what?
And you don't care.
Here's the thing. This album could be really successful and Rumours might still outsell it in the year that this is released. Even though Rumours was released several years before, it still might outsell this very successful album.
Well, I think Rumours was 40 million as of like 2019.
Oh, it's like top 10
record
all time.
Sales.
Top 10 all time.
Yeah.
Rumours is special.
Yeah.
Right.
I think this song also has a through line for the rest of the album, which is the drums sound great. Obviously, that's one thing that I latched onto throughout.
There's one
the whole
very
album
notable exception to that.
Yeah, probably. It might be the tissue box or the Kleenex that he was playing drums on. I think I read a story about that.
Yeah.
But I thought the drums sounded great. The producer and engineer on this had worked on Rumours, and he said it was a bit maddening at times because he wanted it to sound good, and Lindsey Buckingham deliberately wanted a lo-fi thing. So he would take, some of the garbage that Lindsey Buckingham would bring him, from his home studio, and he would try to make it, sound good. And I think there was a lot of a lot of combativeness about like, no, I made it sound like garbage. Put this on the album. And this guy Calais was saying like, I can't do this.
That's
like
not
I need
my job.
to clean it. All right, that's not my job. Is to just take what you give me. Like I gotta make this sound good.
Yeah.
And to his credit, I think he did as good a job he could of taking these really manic songs that Buckingham was coming in with and making them presentable on this album.
And honestly, that's a great segue to the next track on our list, Save Me a Place. Anything else we wanted to say about Think About Me? It's just a nice pop song. I don't have any...
Well, I will say I saw a description of Christine McVie as like an unabashedly smooth pop songwriter, and I was like, yeah, she's just basically like, I am not doing anything to shock you, nothing to surprise you. There's no whoa moment on these songs. It's just from beginning to end fucking pleasant.
Just
nothing wrong with that approach. Nothing wrong at all.
I'm really interested in this hypothesis that this is actually 2 records and an EP, and I look forward to exploring it through that lens in the future.
Yeah.
Because it is really manic in that way. It jumps all over the place.
Yeah.
And with that, let's check out in the realm of that sort of lo-fi home recording sort of vibe that's being brought in, right?
Yeah. Although I'm really interested as to how he got those guitar sounds, because this one jumped out to me as because of the vocals. I'm a sucker for nice harmonies. This was one of the standouts for me. I'm still trying to figure out if it's a mandolin, if it's a 12-string
some
mandolin.
Of it for sure is that he's definitely playing likely the same guitar, and it's sort of hard panned, and they're playing almost the same thing. Right?
Sure.
And he's gone a little further than like double tracking, right? Where he actually has moments where they sort of separate in space. So it actually does so it's doing a lot of that chorusing and then it'll ping pong, right? So like that's a real thing that's happening, especially once you hit about a minute. The thing that I found most interesting in this song and why I put it on the list is there's something as they sort of go into the chorus where it's like the vocal harmony moves into this like major 7 sort of thing. And it is really hip.
This is my favorite song.
It's really good. This one, it was the one I sort of wanted to trash early, but like as I listened to the record more and more, I was like, this is pretty beautiful. Yeah, I find this.
I feel like I got like the song started and I was like, oh Jesus Christ, another one of these. And then by the end of it, I was like, oh no, yeah, I dig this. That again, Adam, like you said, that harmony is so lush, and there's so many really interesting choices of the lower notes that he's putting in. It's not just like a stack of like, here's my main melody and I stack on top of it. It's all over the place.
And this is the other band members providing harmonies, right? This is not him doing tape tricks.
Song. Yes.
Okay, and so that's something else.
Save Me a Place was recorded solely by Buckingham.
Really?
What?
Yes. 3 tracks. The Ledge, Save Me a Place, and That's Enough for Me. All solely recorded by Buckingham.
Interesting.
Yeah. How am I more researched than you guys? I feel like I have after this week.
Mailed it in.
No, I actually had more fun looking into the old Fleetwood Mac stuff. I think the history of Fleetwood Mac is so fun.
Well, I had nothing on that, so good. It's complimentary slacking. This was
so exactly. So I didn't realize that there were 3 songs that were just straight up recorded by Buckingham. That is interesting. Yeah, I'm interested in this I'm interested in this Tom mix that we're gonna hear after the fact.
Hell yeah.
Was there anything else on Save Me a Place? I really do love this sort of like major 7 harmony. They sort of comes in around 30 seconds. I guess I'm going to call it the chorus.
Yeah.
This one again, it felt modern. It felt forward looking. And I feel like a lot of the McVie stuff felt a little backwards, trying to recapture the Rumours magic. And nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But this is the one I'm like, I'll give it to you. You're trying something. And it worked on this one. It doesn't always work, but it worked on this one.
So to that end, it wasn't on the focus list. But I just think for the listeners at home, let's roll Sarah, right? Because I think at this point in the record, you're literally at the end of side 1. You haven't heard Is it possible you haven't heard Stevie Nicks' voice yet?
She's probably on a harmony in one of the first 4.
Probably, but you can't really even tell.
Probably, right?
Yeah.
So let's roll Sarah. We don't have to dig into it. This was the biggest hit on the record.
Still never cared for her. I never got it. I never got it. And you're right, Phil. She is divisive. I feel like it's she either does it for you or she doesn't, and she just doesn't do it for me. And so maybe the fact that she gets a lot of praise makes me dislike her more than I would.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I feel like this record, and even this song, Sarah, is a good example. I mean, Stevie Nicks is a bit of a one-trick pony, right? Even her songs, like Sarah, just on this record, you've got Sarah, Storms, Angel, like
Beautiful Child.
Yeah, on previous records, you've got Rhiannon, Dreams, these are one-word titles. Like, it's very, like, she's got a formula. She runs the formula. And sometimes it's great. You know?
Gold Dust Woman is a great song.
Absolutely.
That's a great song. I like that song.
Yeah.
I don't like Dreams.
I like Stevie Nicks.
Not a fan of Dreams. Anyway.
Oh, I think Dreams is great.
Rihanna, don't like that either. But anyway, hard disagree.
Adam, you're the tiebreaker on Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
She's a little bitchy.
It's the old Roman thumb thing. I think her voice is unique. For those of you watching at home, I had the old Marcus Aurelius thumb sideways thing. Anyway, I think her voice is so distinct that I like it. I would like to hear her push herself. I've said this before on plenty of episodes where you don't truly hear somebody's voice till they really give it a little something, and I feel like she's always cruising at about 68%, and that's her, and that's what her sound is. So, yeah, good on you.
I don't dislike her as a singer. I don't dislike the timbre of her voice. I just don't think she writes particularly good songs. I will say this with the caveat that she's written every song that she's written is better than any song I've ever written. So, let's just get that out there as a baseline. I'm not claiming that I have some skill that she doesn't, but I've never really gotten it. Anyway, this is going to be a long one tonight.
I was just going to say, with that, let's move on to what makes you think you're the one.
Phil, we've got 13 more songs.
Dude.
Actually, so if we listen to Sarah, okay, so if you were listening to this record, after Sarah would be what makes you think you're the one. So that's what we're rolling now.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Let's roll.
The drums sound like absolute shit on this song. The recording fidelity of these drums, it sounds like they're like on a fucking Wu-Tang album or something like that. Which is to say they sound like they were recorded in a garbage can, and not in the good way that Wu-Tang does it, in a bad way. How do they sound so bad? And then
this record is really weird in that like it's mixed so oddly. There are a bunch of songs where I feel like the vocals are buried. You can't distinguish them like from the instrumentation. And then, Tom, you make an interesting point. Like these do sound like they're sort of like in a paper cup or something.
Yeah, like you recorded them in a living room.
On cocaine.
I think, I think it's a deliberate decision on making them sound like garbage for the overall vibe of the song. I think the actual drum playing is very cool.
Oh, yeah.
In that, it's just. I haven't heard a lot like this song. This one stuck out to me when it first came on. I was like, this is odd, because not only is it lo-fi, but it locks into a beat, but it's never like, you never bob your head to it because it's just constant snare quarters, and like there's never a hi-hat doing an eighth. It's an odd tune. And the snare changes sounds at the 42-second mark as well. It's like it sounds like the snare's in another room, and then like a quarter way through the song, all of a sudden the snare jumps up,
this, Adam.
It's next to you.
This is going to be such a great segue for what's
It's like the guy who was standing in front of the microphone, like took a step to the side, like, "Hey, buddy, get out of the way." Right. Like, oh, my bad. Here's my problem with everything you said. Like lo-fi drums, I don't mind lo-fi drums, but here's
my problem with everything you said.
You can't have lo-fi drums and then have a in-your-face, in-your-ear, close-mic'd, super fat, nice bass sound, and like a really good, like high-fidelity vocal sound, and the only thing that sounds like that shit is the drums. Like, that's
garbage.
It.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, go for all
I can
lo-fi
dig that
if you're gonna do that.
He's screaming on this song. It is unique on the record in that way that like this is the one where I feel like Buckingham is really, really loud.
This is in his like. As I'm dealing with my divorce feelings, I have feeling a little overwhelmed today, and I'm just going to take it out in an aggressive way, as opposed to the
What do you think it's like being in the studio with Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks?
Oh my god! Oh, and Christine
like
McVie, and John McVie. They also just got divorced too.
Well, so they would, I believe I guess they all sort of reconciled to a degree because they went on tour. But, well, the other thing is, like, McVie we didn't cover this earlier. He had a serious drinking problem. Like, he was, like, put on the bench by, like, old Fleetwood Mac. By, like, like lawsuit era Fleetwood Mac. They were, like, Peter Green went to some party in Munich and dropped bad acid and was never the same. Very like Syd Barrett sort of story, right? Even though I think he got his shit together in a much different way later. And that sort of sparks him leaving the early band. Similar happens with McVie in this, like, in the lawsuit area, where he's drinking so much that it's part of the band sort of like not going on tour. So he's...
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, he's a shit show in his own way, just maybe not quite as publicly as Buckingham and Nicks.
So I also believe that Mick Fleetwood and Christine McVie were banging at some point during this era as well. Like, there was just, everybody was kind of just doing everybody. I mean, cocaine will, I'm sure, have that effect on you. But
sure.
I was just picturing in my head, like, as I was listening to the Lindsey Buckingham cut of this album, I'm picturing a guy who has a substance abuse problem, and he is clearly not dealing with his divorce all that well. And I'm picturing him like in a therapy session where he's talking to his therapist, and they're like, all right, well, like, you know, how are you feeling today? And they're like, oh, you know, I'm still really having some hard time getting over my ex-wife. It's like, okay, well, you know, you probably should
Having a lot of recurring negative thoughts.
You probably should try to like limit the contact that you're going to have with her. Oh no, I'm contractually obligated to actually work very closely with her. Yes.
For 366 continuous days, you know, I'm going to see her.
Just keep it professional.
Right, keep it professional.
There are several bits in the routine where the gig is I stare deeply into her eyes, where we sing perfect harmony about our bittersweet love.
Yep.
That's the bit.
Yeah. So, you know, let's just you know, try to keep as much distance as possible. It's like, well, I have to work with her on these highly emotional songs that I'm writing about how I have mixed feelings about my relationship with her, and I kind of hate her, but I still love her, and I want her to be back together. And the therapist would just be like, yeah, you should just like not do that. And if you're going to do that, make sure you're not pumped to the fucking tits on stimulants all the time. 'Cause that's not going to help anything.
He was like, also, me and my friends did so much cocaine we blacked out, bought a Porsche, crashed it.
Does that count?
The therapist would be like, listen, I got to be honest, that sounds pretty dope, but like, you know, try not to do that too much.
You're obviously pretty badass.
Yeah, just pump the brakes if you can.
Oh, man. Whew.
All right, let's keep moving this train wreck along. So what do you think?
This is the point at which, you know, from my perspective, there's a whole side and a half that doesn't need to be there, right? So the record kicks off over and over, real slow start. The Ledge, Think About Me, Save Me a Place, Sarah, you know, What Makes You Think You're the One. I'm now just going to straight up skip 20 to 22 minutes of material. We could debate what in here is good, what in here is not. But I think it speaks to the record's flaws that, like, I can just skip a continuous 21 minutes and create a better mix.
Right. And you're better off for having done it.
I took I took 5 of the first 6 songs, skipped the next 6 songs, and cherry-picked the end of the record. And in my opinion, you get a better mix. And 2 of the next 3 songs we're going to listen to, I put on here so we can slam them.
2 things wrong with this song. Number 1, for better or worse, the Doors own the weird whisper with Riders on the Storm. If you're going to have a song, you don't get to have a little whisper track in the background. The Doors already own that.
But yes, you're right, yes.
Number 2, you write a song called Brown Eyes and you have an extended sha-la-la-la part. You don't get to do that. Van Morrison.
But, you know, with 40 million copies sold of your prior album, you can do whatever the hell you want.
It does. It makes me, like, I just want, like, I want it to be 7 minutes long, but then do the thing that I want. Like, whatever it's going to take, you know?
Yeah.
I also feel like if there was just, like, a button I could hit and, like, my band's drums could sound like this, I would pay $200 for that button. Like, these drums do sound so good.
I'll take that plug-in right now. Give me the Brown Eyes Mick Fleetwood plug-in. Totally. I'll take it. $300, I'm good. Mm-hmm. Speaking of songs that need a bridge, should we move along to
Beautiful Child?
Beautiful Child.
No one's ever had that sentiment before. This child is beautiful. Look how unique of a songwriter I am. But I sound like I've been kind of smoking for a while, but in a good way.
I mean, it is pretty hackneyed. Yeah. I don't know. This one, yeah, I thought it was.
Let's pop in for a second. Yeah. We're gonna play Beautiful Child, but I specifically request that we play the part that has my least favorite lyric maybe of all time, which is your eyes say yes, but you don't say yes. Which I think is
pretty bad. Only on one condition.
Okay.
On the condition that we briefly go back to 2 minutes of what makes you think you're the one. Because I didn't call out my favorite ridiculous sound on this record. So let's hit your sound first. So let's run Beautiful Child. And what are we highlighting, Tom? Do you have a timestamp on that?
Oh, I don't have a timestamp on it. It comes up a couple of times.
All right.
Your eyes say yes, but you don't say yes.
Don't say yes. It's pretty bad.
All right.
besides my complaint about the lyrics being terrible, which they are. I will give this to Stevie Nicks. This subject matter, it at least sounds appropriate for somebody who's having thinking back on a relationship that's broken up when you're like in that sort of post-divorce era, and it's not like a sappy love song that's, written about a non-existent person. I feel that this is like it's trite sentiments.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong, but I feel like she actually felt these things and was like, I feel this as a genuine emotion. Again, it's the we called it many different things. It's the the hot girl syndrome. It's the rich guy syndrome. It's the rock star syndrome, where like nobody tells you that your ideas are dumb anymore, and that like, hey, this is a really stupid thought, and like everybody's had this before, but she really means it.
I'm glad we played Sarah, even though it wasn't on the focus list for the week, and I'm glad that you've brought up this multiple EP LP hypothesis, because like this really does, like, it feels just like sort of phoned in Stevie Nicks, right? Like Sarah feels a little more like real Stevie Nicks. I feel like I want to say like similar to the McVie songs, like she's just trying to relive Rumours, but that's really just not fair because she kind of just writes Stevie Nicks songs, right? Like
she's got her own genre.
Yeah, not genre, but like,
yeah.
Even if you look at the other records, she doesn't write as many songs either, right? Like she's only good for so many quality songs.
This is not one of them.
My other note was that this could have been written by an AI bot for like sappy song, three chords, minor, go.
No. And they're like, just throw some harmonies on them.
Seated with child,
like,
right? Exactly. At the
fine.
end, harmonies, three quarters.
And then they sound great. The harmonies sound fantastic.
Yeah, they do.
But
they
it is just like pointless melodrama, Yeah. Yeah. But like at this point, right, like you've been hearing Stevie Nicks for 7 years, basically, singing better versions of this song.
Yeah.
All right. Before we move on to the last track on the focus list for this week, I want to jump back to 1 minute and 56 seconds of what makes 158 and 201, where he just goes for a minute. Like, what the fuck is that? Listen to that. Listen to that back.
Goat vibrato, and he lays into it. It's not even at the end of like a sung note. He just comes in with.
Dude, there's 90 seconds left in the song. Like we've got a ways to go.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this another Buckingham solo ride?
Oh, hell yeah.
Hold on. Yeah. I believe so. What makes you think you're the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a Buckingham solo.
Save Me a Place in the Ledge?
Save Me a Place, That's Enough for Me, and The Ledge. So that's enough for me, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So this one does have the members of Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
At least Mick Fleetwood playing on it. All right, let's jump into the last.
Lindsey Buckingham lead vocal lines do you think are recorded and laid on top of each other? Because it's kind of like the Lindsey Buckingham sound, but it sounds like an effect almost. Like it doesn't sound like just double or triple
tracking. Yeah, there's
tracking.
Some kind of like synth banjo happening in here that I have a lot of trouble getting past.
But you're saying his vocal, when he layers his vocal, it almost sounds like the Lindsey Buckingham. Again, the plug-in that you would buy
like
for GarageBand, right?
Boom.
Yeah.
It is a unique chorus, right?
Yeah. I just this one felt a little bit more maybe backward looking. Like this felt a little bit more like, I don't know why I had Secondhand News in my head when I listened to this one.
It's a good call.
Probably I think it might just even be the vocal treatment is just so reminiscent of what they nailed on Rumours. This might have been the one where he didn't win the argument about turn all the knobs to crazy,
Right.
But yeah, this is, it's okay. Cheerful sounding, depressing ass lyrics. Like, okay. Yeah, good for you. Not that impressed. I don't know. Were you guys impressed?
No, man. At this point in the actual record, I'm really fatigued. Right? Like, at this point in the actual record, like, I think this is song, like, what, like
this
17
is side
or 18
3,
out of 20?
This is side 3, song 2. So yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. I moved this one to the end because it's sort of like a punchline on where I'm going with this as we move to the vote.
Yeah.
Right, which is
let's do this thing.
Which is like, that's enough for me. I don't need to save my vote for the end, as is typical. I think you can pass on Tusk. I think there's some great songs on Tusk. Tom, I'm really interested in your multi-EP LP hypothesis, and I look forward to listening to those mixes in that way. I do think there's a bunch of good tunes on here, but I absolutely think you can pass on this record. I don't think it's 80 minutes of your life that you need to listen to in this order. I don't think it tells a story.
I would have, so I'm going to say no, but the caveat would be that I think that, again, the mix that Phil, you put together is a great representation, because it's 74 minutes is a lot.
Totally.
And even if you didn't pick the best songs, even if this was a bit manic, even if it was scattershot and there's weird sounds and it doesn't really hold together, I still would have liked it more than 74 minutes of, to Tom's point, being mashed together. So unfortunately, I'm going to say no, but I'm glad I listened to it. I'll say that. I'm glad I listened to it.
I am also glad I listened to it. I would not recommend listening to it for other people. I don't think that you need to. Again, I keep coming back to this core hypothesis that this should have just been two separate albums than an EP, because I think that what ended up happening is you had Christine McVie, who kind of really defined a lot of that Fleetwood Mac sound, and her collaboration with Lindsey Buckingham specifically defined a lot of that sound, and then you throw in the very distinctive Stevie Nicks vocals, and I think they were trying to mash what should have just been their own disparate sounds into Fleetwood Mac, and so I think that they should have been moving in opposite directions, and they wanted to be moving in opposite directions, and instead they kind of felt this gravity pulling them back and making them make sacrifices on the songs to maybe change them up. But then also Lindsey Buckingham's like, no sacrifices on some songs. It's gonna be fucking weird, and I don't give a shit.
And everything was worse because of it.
Everything was worse.
Like everything suffered because of it.
And it's a really interesting, like, in a different way. Like, Tom, I think that shines a really bright light on Rumours and Fleetwood Mac too, right? Is that, like, there was a period of time where, between the excitement and the drugs and the romance and the band being reborn, like, it worked. Mm-hmm. It worked to astonishing effect from about 1974 to about 1977. To astonishing effect, right? Yeah. But after that, like, it just got a little weird, you know? Rumours and Fleetwood Mac, too, are timeless.
They're
right?
timeless.
They'll live on forever.
But, and you know, I'm going to also echo the point that Adam made, like, if you're bringing me 70 plus minutes of music, you better be fucking bringing it with every single one of those tracks. I better not be able to find any fat on that album, because if I find any fat, I'm like, get rid of it. It does not need to be there. Everything over 45 minutes is just excessive. And so if you have 45 plus minutes, 50 plus minutes, 60 plus minutes, those extra 15 minutes, they better be goddamn bangers, wall to wall, or I'm going to be like, just trim it down. Trim it down. I love the White Album. You could have trimmed the White Album down to one of the best goddamn albums of all time if you cut out a bunch of that bullshit. Now, that was experimental. Yes.
Adam just died, by the way.
It's important. It's important to do these kind of experiments. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But I don't need to hear it on an album. Keep it as a rarities or something like that. Don't mash it all into it.
30 years after the fact.
You know, I have a 9-year-old son, and about 6 months ago, he heard Revolution Number 9 for the first time. And his initial reaction to it was like, what is this? Wow, this is so interesting. And about 45 seconds into the song, he was like, what the fuck is happening? This is not music.
Yep.
And it was interesting to hear that from a kid, right? His sort of initial, like, wow, followed by, like, what is going on? Where is this going?
Yeah, you're like,
right, when is it going to land?
What is this? And then a minute, you're like, oh, okay, this is what this is.
I'm still paying attention, by the way. Like, when is it going to happen?
Yep.
All right, so wrapping it up, that is a thumbs down. That is a reluctant no on Fleetwood Mac's 1979 release, Tusk. A lot of great material in there, but in the end, just too much record. So, What are we moving on to next, boys? What's the next move here? I think we probably have a little business to attend to before we wrap up for the night.
Oh, yeah, we got to bust out the old Albinator and find out what we are going to be listening to next week. Thank you very much, dear listeners, for sticking with us. Trust me, our listening of this album, actually, this might actually be one of the ones where the listening of the album actually took more time than our podcast is going to take.
It's true.
It's been a journey. Let's get our homework assignment for next week. So, without any further ado, drum roll, please. Next week we will be listening to. Okay, the album is Heavy Weather by the band Weather Report. I gotta give it to a band that's just like, hey, what's the most boring fucking thing in the world? I don't know, maybe like a weather report. That's our band name.
That's our
The least exciting thing you could possibly imagine. We almost named ourselves Third Grade Report Card, but we decided no. Let me guess, you got all stars? Great. Weather Report.
I know very little by Weather Report. That was Jocko.
Yeah.
Jocko's band,
dude,
right?
they
Jocko Pastorius.
suck. You're gonna hate this shit.
No. I mean, I know it's insane musicianship, but I don't know that I've ever.
Definitely
Was
Jocko.
Winwood in there? Winwood Weather Report?
I don't think so, but I could be wrong. There's also
some of the guys from
definitely-
Traffic. Yeah.
Then it must be Winwood. There's definitely a. Let me just pull up this band real quick. Oof, man, I feel shocked by the first. Wayne Shorter, Jocko Pastorius.
Oh, wow.
So Wayne Shorter, that was the name I was looking for. But yeah, Wayne Shorter, Jocko Pastorius.
Yeah, no Winwood. I was wrong on that. Anyway.
Jocko's enough for me.
Yeah.
Stay tuned next week for another episode of We Read Wikipedia Silently While You Listen. But yeah, we'll be listening to Weather Report's album Heavy Weather for next week. So everybody please go out and give a listen to that. Hey, tell a friend about us. 1001 album complaints at gmail.com. Tell us how much we suck, all that stuff. Or
Yeah,
how
man,
much you like us.
that was on my checklist here, dude. You're blowing through my stops.
Oh,
here.
I'm sorry. Well, I understand you just have to read that checklist no matter what's actually happening in the
Yeah,
podcast.
1001 record reviews at biz.net.
That's fantastic.
All right. So with that, I would like to bid farewell. Another 1001 album complaints.
This is at adamlandangelfire.com.
This is you should put me on the spot to come up with one of those.
What is this? GeoCities or whatever.
Oh yeah. This is
Prodigy?
Tom at prodigy.biz.
Yeah. And this is Phil at Verizon.net. Until next week. Boosh.